Welcome to the lecture on the nutrient absorption systems. Today we're going to focus on three systems that have to do with nutrient absorption: the respiratory system, digestive system, and circulatory system. So first we're going to look at the digestive system. The functions of the digestive system are to break down food into simpler molecules that can then be used by the cells of our body. It absorbs that food, eliminates waste, and then obtains nutrients from the food that is broken down. There are many parts to the digestive system. You start in the mouth, it ends up going down your pharynx, down the esophagus to the stomach. After it's through the stomach, we go through the small intestine, which is very long, through the large intestine, through the rectum, colon, and then outside the body. There are also accessory organs that help us break down the food. So like our salivary glands help create saliva to break down food. Our liver, gallbladder, and pancreas creates biles or liver enzymes or different enzymes to break down food to help us with that digestive process as well. But the main goal is to break down that food so our body can absorb the molecules or the nutrients to be used by our cells. Now we did see some evolutionary trends in the digestive system from our intro video. We noticed that they say that organisms started with simple endocytosis, where they just bring in mass amounts of food through a little vesicle to digest. They break it down and then they end up just releasing it. There's two different types of digestion: intracellular digestion and extracellular digestion. Intracellular digestion is where food is being digested inside the individual cells, which means the food has to be smaller than the cells because it has to be able to fit in to be digested and then released. Then in extracellular digestion, the food is going to be broken down outside the cells. So they're much larger than the cells of the organism, and it needs to be broken down before the cells can absorb the nutrients from it. So we looked at the different types of digestive systems during our first video. There's the two-way flow, the one-way flow, and how they evolved from that. There's also organisms that go through filter feeding. Some invertebrates go through this, and whales and rays go through this. So if you want to come back to the hard copy notes and watch these videos about how filter feeding occurs, I highly recommend you do that. And then also there's another interesting video here about how invertebrates like starfish can eat as well. You're going to end up watching this today in our lecture, after our lecture, the digestive system and how it works. And now we're going to move to the respiratory system. The function of the respiratory system is for gas exchange, specifically oxygen and carbon dioxide. It needs to provide oxygen to our blood so that we can take the oxygen to our cells to go through cellular respiration to create ATP energy. Remember from Unit 3, right? We need oxygen to go to the cells. The mitochondria is going to use that oxygen to go through the process of cellular respiration in order to create ATP. Now, cellular respiration then creates the output of carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide is toxic and needs to be removed from the body. And so it goes right back into the bloodstream to come back to the lungs to be released by the respiratory system. We know that the respiratory organs have large surface areas that are in contact with either air or water, depending on the type of organism you are. We are with air. Things like fish are in contact with water. And then they have ways to keep the gas exchange surfaces moist to allow that diffusion to occur. So having some type of moisture in there does help the gas exchange to occur. Here are the different parts of the respiratory system. You first have your nose, which warms and filters the air. Then it goes down the pharynx or the throat. It's going to go past the epiglottis, which is a flap that covers our trachea to make sure that we don't end up having food going down our trachea when we swallow. It's going to go through the larynx, which is where our voice box is, through the trachea, all the way down to the lungs. Then in the lungs, there are alveoli in here. That is where the gas exchange actually occurs. They look like little balloons. And then also the diaphragm is an accessory organ that contracts and relaxes to help inflate and deflate the lungs. Whenever you contract the diaphragm, it's going to pull downwards and it's going to cause the lungs to inflate. And then when you relax the diaphragm, it is what allows the lungs to collapse and relax. Here's just another video of that. You inhale by contracting the diaphragm and having negative pressure pull on those lungs to open it, and then you exhale by relaxing it, which puts positive pressure back to allow you to breathe out. So the evolutionary trends, we talked about this in our intro video, that there are different ways that organisms in their respiratory system is monitored. If you need to go back to that lecture to watch that to make sure you know the differences between the organisms. And now we're going to go into the circulatory system. The function of the circulatory system is to transport oxygen and nutrients to all the cells in the body and to take carbon dioxide and waste away from cells in the body. And so it's going to be that transport system for all the nutrients that are absorbed when you eat through the digestive system. It's also going to transport all the gases that you need for the gas exchange in your lungs. There are different parts to the circulatory system. First, you have your heart, which is the main organ that pumps the blood. Then you have blood vessels, which is the tubes that the blood travels in. We have different names for those blood vessels. First, we have arteries that carry blood away from the heart. Arteries carry away, while veins carry the blood back to the heart. In between arteries and veins are what we call capillaries. This is where the exchange of nutrients and waste take place at the cell level by diffusion. And so this is where it'll take up any of the waste and then to drop off any of the nutrients into the cells. And then that's when they end up going back to the heart, which goes then to the lungs, into other areas to get rid of the waste. We talked about open and closed circulatory system already, right? Open circulatory system is when the blood is only partially contained within the system of blood vessels. The blood is then held in a cavity where the gas change occurs, and then it goes back to the heart. And then the closed circulatory system is where it's always in the vessels, it extends throughout the whole body, it doesn't leave those vessels, and then the materials reach the body tissues by diffusing across the walls of those blood vessels. This is much more efficient than blood circulates more efficiently in a closed circulatory system than an open one. Here's another picture of that. This is the open one. It pumps into the cavity and then sucks it back up. This one, it stays in the vessels at all times. So what are the interactions then? These three systems work together and interact with each other in order to absorb the nutrients, use the nutrients, and get rid of waste. And so we're going to start with the digestive system. First, you're going to eat. It's going to go through your stomach. It's going to go to that small intestine where you're absorbing the nutrients. Right from the small intestine, it's going to go straight into the circulatory system. Capillaries are going to pick up those nutrients and put it straight into the bloodstream. It's going to go to the heart, and it's going to be pumped around the body in the circulatory system to make it to the individual cells. So it's going to end up dropping off the nutrients to those cells. Then, once the cells use the nutrients, if there are any waste, then it's going to drop it back into the circulatory system so it can be transported throughout the body. And then it's going to go to the excretory system, which is where the kidneys are to create urine. So it ends up getting rid of that waste through urine in the excretory system. Now the respiratory system is very similar to this. You breathe in to get oxygen, the nutrient that you need. It's going to go straight into the bloodstream because those capillaries are going to pick it up in the alveoli. It's going to be pumped across the body until it gets to the cells. The cells are going to take the oxygen in. They're going to use the oxygen at the mitochondria through cellular respiration, and that oxygen is going to end up becoming carbon dioxide, which is a waste and toxic to our body. We're also creating ATP through that process. So it's good for our bodies to create that ATP, but we do have to then get rid of the waste product of carbon dioxide. So that carbon dioxide is going to go back into the blood at that cellular level, into the circulatory system, back to the lungs. It's going to diffuse across into the alveoli again, and then we're going to breathe out the carbon dioxide. So all three of these systems interact very heavily in order for us to get nutrients. from our food or from the air, and to get rid of waste.